Most people celebrate the day they finish paying off a debt. Jewish families often celebrate the day they take one on. That single difference in perspective has created more generational wealth than almost any other financial principle in history. While the average person runs from debt like it's financial poison, those who truly understand money are using it as the most powerful lever for building empires. The gap between these two mindsets isn't just about money. It's about fundamentally different beliefs about what debt actually represents. Here's what nobody tells you. Debt isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool, and like any tool, its value depends entirely on what you're building with it. The problem is that most people were taught to fear all debt equally. Your parents probably told you to avoid it. Your teachers reinforced that message. Society treats being debt-free as the ultimate financial achievement. But here's the reality that changes everything. The wealthiest families in the world carry massive amounts of debt, and they do it intentionally. They're not trapped by it, they're leveraging it. The distinction that separates wealth builders from everyone else is brutally simple. Poor people use debt to buy things that lose value. Rich people use debt to buy things that generate value. One group finances depreciating assets. The other finances appreciating assets. One group pays interest on consumption. The other group collects returns that dwarf the interest cost. This isn't about being reckless with money. It's about understanding that strategic debt can multiply your wealth faster than saving alone ever could. Think about this for a second. When you save $100,000 to buy something in cash, you're using your money. When you put 20% down and finance the rest, you're using someone else's money to control an asset worth 5 times what you invested. That's leverage. That's how you turn modest capital into substantial wealth. Jewish financial education emphasizes this principle early. Children learn that good debt puts money in your pocket over time, while bad debt takes it out. The goal isn't to avoid debt. The goal is to master the difference. Let me give you a concrete example that illustrates this perfectly. 2 people want to invest in real estate. The first person saves for 15 years until they have enough cash to buy a rental property outright for $300,000. They own it free and clear, no mortgage, and it generates about $1,500 a month in rental income. The second person takes that same 15 years, but instead of waiting, they put 20% down on a similar property immediately and finance the rest. Yes, they have a mortgage payment, but the rent covers it plus expenses, and they still have cash flow. But here's where it gets interesting. Every few years, as properties appreciate and they build equity, they refinance or take out equity lines and use that money as down payments on additional properties. By the end of 15 years, the first person owns 1 property generating $18,000 a year. The second person owns 6 properties generating a combined $70,000 a year, even after all mortgage payments and expenses. Same time frame, same initial savings rate, completely different outcome. That's the power of understanding how to use debt strategically. The Jewish approach to debt is rooted in ancient wisdom but applied with modern precision. The Talmud discusses lending and borrowing extensively, not to discourage it, but to establish how it should be done ethically and effectively. There's recognition that capital should flow, that money sitting idle serves no one, and that borrowing to create opportunity is fundamentally different from borrowing to fund consumption. This framework creates a completely different relationship with debt. It's not about living beyond your means. It's about using financial tools to amplify productive capacity. Tell me what city you're in right now, because this principle applies everywhere, but the opportunities look different depending on where you are. The mechanics of leveraging debt remain constant whether you're in New York, Miami, Los Angeles, or anywhere else. What changes is what you're leveraging it for. The underlying truth stays the same. Those who understand how to responsibly use other people's money to acquire income-producing or appreciating assets will always outpace those who rely solely on their own savings. Here's another layer most people miss entirely. Wealthy families don't just use debt for acquisition. They use it for tax optimization. When you take out a loan, that's not taxable income. When you use that loan to invest in assets that appreciate or generate income, you're building wealth with pre-tax dollars. Meanwhile, the interest on investment debt is often tax-deductible. You're essentially getting a discount on the cost of leverage while the assets you purchased are working for you. This is why sophisticated investors often carry mortgages even when they could pay cash. The arbitrage between low interest rates and higher investment returns, combined with tax advantages, makes it mathematically superior to tying up capital. The fear-based approach to debt keeps people trapped in a cycle where they can only grow as fast as they can save. That's painfully slow. By the time you save enough to make significant investments, opportunities have passed, prices have risen, and you're always playing catch-up. Strategic debt allows you to move at the speed of opportunity rather than the speed of accumulation. You can acquire assets when the timing is right, when deals are available, when market conditions favor buyers. That timing advantage alone can make the difference between modest returns and exponential growth. But here's the part that requires real honesty. This only works if you have discipline and financial literacy. Debt in the hands of someone who doesn't understand cash flow, who can't analyze deals, who makes emotional purchases, that's genuinely dangerous. This is why Jewish financial education emphasizes both the power of leverage and the responsibility that comes with it. You don't hand someone a powerful tool without teaching them how to use it safely. The education comes first. Understanding revenue, expenses, debt service coverage ratios, cap rates, return on investment. These aren't optional concepts. They're the foundation that makes strategic debt work. Most people accumulate bad debt without even realizing it. They finance cars that lose 20% of their value the moment they drive off the lot. They carry credit card balances on purchases that provide zero return. They take out personal loans for vacations or weddings or things that create memories but not income. None of that is inherently evil, but it's the opposite of wealth building. Every dollar paid in interest on consumption is a dollar that can't be invested in production. The opportunity cost compounds year after year, and that's how people stay stuck. The wealthy do the exact inverse. They might drive modest cars they pay cash for, or lease strategically for business purposes. They minimize consumption debt to zero, but they'll gladly take on millions in investment debt if the numbers work. A $10 million commercial property purchased with 25% down and a $7 million mortgage at 4% interest, generating enough income to cover the mortgage and expenses while appreciating over time. That's not risky. That's calculated wealth building. The debt is covered by the asset's productivity. The appreciation builds equity. The tax benefits reduce the effective cost. Every aspect is working in your favor. This mindset shift is uncomfortable for most people because it requires letting go of deeply ingrained beliefs. Debt has been demonized so thoroughly that even discussing its strategic use feels rebellious. But looking at how wealth actually gets built, not in theory, but in practice, the evidence is overwhelming. Real estate empires, business expansions, investment portfolios that generate serious returns. They're almost always built with leverage. Pure cash operations grow slowly and limit scale. Leveraged operations, done correctly, accelerate growth exponentially. There's also a psychological component that can't be ignored. When you use debt strategically and it works, when you see assets appreciating and income flowing while you're using other people's money, it fundamentally changes your confidence with financial decisions. You realize that capital can be acquired, that you're not limited to what you personally have saved, that opportunities don't have to pass you by just because you don't have cash on hand. That shift in perspective opens up possibilities that simply don't exist when you're constrained to a cash-only mentality. Now, the caveat that matters. Interest rates, market conditions, and personal circumstances all factor into whether taking on debt makes sense in any given situation. When rates are low and asset prices are reasonable, leverage is incredibly powerful. When rates spike or assets are overvalued, the math changes. This isn't about blindly taking on debt in all situations. It's about understanding when and how to use it effectively. It's about running the numbers, understanding your risk tolerance, and making informed decisions rather than emotional ones. What separates those who build wealth from those who stay trapped is often just this one distinction. One group sees debt as something to be avoided at all costs, even when it means missing opportunities. The other group sees debt as a tool to be mastered, used strategically when it creates advantage, and avoided when it doesn't. The difference in outcomes over a lifetime is staggering. We're talking about the gap between modest comfort and genuine financial freedom, between leaving your kids a paid-off house and leaving them a portfolio that generates income for generations. You just got access to a perspective that most people will spend their entire lives never understanding because they've been conditioned to fear the very tool that could set them free. This kind of content that breaks down real wealth principles instead of recycling surface-level advice is exactly what keeps showing up on this channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and hit that like button because this information deserves to reach people who are ready to think differently about money. Those who really grasp the power shift that just happened here will drop this down in the comments. Debt isn't the enemy. Ignorance is. And what's coming in the next video takes this entire conversation to a level that will completely reframe how you see financial risk itself.